If you are just tuning in, this is NBC Sheila Mack Show here on KCAA Radio, the station that leaves no listener behind. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and I'd like to give a special thank you and shout out to Change Toothpaste. That's at changetoothpaste.com, and it is toothpaste tablets just like paste, but without the waste. So let me tell you why I am making the switch over to Change Toothpaste. Now, this is kind of wild because I just found out about all this myself. So, more than 900 million toothpaste tubes are entering our landfills and oceans every year on a global scale. Toothpaste tubes take over 500 years to break down and cannot be recycled. A fundamental change is required, and it starts with you, and it is starting with me. So, their sustainable toothpaste tablet removes the need for a tube altogether. Packaged in compostable pouches, they reduce the environmental footprint while giving you a clean, fresh brushing without any harsh chemicals. Change toothpaste tablets help you make a small change that makes a big environmental impact. Now, their mission started when they noticed how their kids show care for our planet, and they wanted to do their part to reduce the global plastic waste problem to make sure that the environment is safe and healthy for generations to come. So together, we believe we can create a global movement to protect our beloved planet. You brush your teeth each and every day, obviously a few times a day. So once your toothpaste tube is finished, it's thrown into the garbage, and you don't think about it. With Change toothpaste, the tablets are just like paste without the waste, helping your teeth feel naturally fresh, clean, and prepared for anything that your day has in store. Thank you again, Change Toothpaste. And if you want to learn more about Change Toothpaste, you can go to changetoothpaste.com. Thank you again, Change Toothpaste, for being the sponsors of this episode. And for listeners just wanting to try Change Toothpaste out, you can use special code Sheila, capital letters SHEILA 20 to get a discount on your first order. Enjoy.
Reboot, welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. This is Sheila Mack, and today I have special guest star here today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, so I'm going to read for a second here. You may have seen Dar in shows such as NCIS Los Angeles, Criminal Minds, Supergirl, and Silicon Valley, just to name a few. But there's a lot more to Dar than just his history in Hollywood, as exciting as that is. In fact, Dar has an incredible life story, including his escape from the revolution in Iran, to his time spent in a cult, to his passion to reach out and help others succeed in life. And as you'll hear today, Dar is going to tell us how he happened to come across Centerpoint Research Institute and Holosync, and the impact that meditation continues to have in his life story. All right, welcome, Dar. Happy to have you on the show today.
Hi, Sheila. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that.
Hi.
Yeah, that's quite an intro there.
Yes.
So where would you like to, it's your show. You tell me what you want to talk about.
Okay, well, this show talks about different rock bottoms in life and how you got back on track in your
Okay.
business, your life, or some type of tool to give to people this year as we're all hitting different rock bottoms that really took us by surprise. So,
That sounds funny. I don't mean to laugh at anybody's situation, different rock bottoms. But yeah, I mean, 2020 is it's been a big challenge for a lot of people,
yes,
for 100% sure. Yeah. First of all, congratulations on your show. You
thank you.
look great. Yeah, I love it. You've got a pretty interesting story too. Have you shared yours with your audience?
I have to quite an extent and in my book. So,
Yeah, they need to get out and get that book.
yes.
Lot of hard fought wisdom in there. Yeah, it is true. I'll give you the brief, like, Reader's Digest summary version of my background. So I'm half American white boy, half Iranian. My father is the guy who's from Iran. My mother's from the States, and they met here in the States on a blind date in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh,
And it's kind of one of those, you know, cliched love at first sight thing. But they got married about, I want to say, probably like a couple years after they'd met, which was moving fast in those days. So I was made and produced in Iran, as my father likes to joke, and lived there the first 2 years of my life. And then we moved to the States. My mother had twins, so not my twins, but twin brothers were born. And now they've got 3 boys. And a few years later, my 4th brother was born. My 3rd brother, 4 boys. And we moved around a lot. I've got a very Persian name. It's very Iranian. But I look like this. So there was always this disconnect, this cognitive dissonance would happen. And we moved a lot. We just moved a lot. I think it was because my father and mother just saw that we were pretty much eating and pooping machines, and we were growing, and there was always a new pair of shoes, new pants, new shirt. And so if he got a better job and it was across town, or it was in the next state, or it was across the country, or on the other side of the world, we moved. So I was frequently the new guy. I would be like the first or second guy called every time in class. And they would snicker and they'd turn around and expect to see somebody that looked anything but like this face. And it exposed me to a lot of stuff. And I was raised in the States. I've lived here most of my life. But we did return back to Iran when I was about 10 years old. It was just before my 10th birthday. And that was in 74. And we lived there for 3 years. And we managed to get out just before the revolution hit full maximum steam. And we were fortunate that way, because a lot of people had many more troubles, and even more people, lost loved ones or lost their lives. And so, it was a really tough time. And when we came back to the States, I just turned 15, and I didn't know if I was coming or going. I didn't know how to talk about, hey, my dad's still in Iran and he works for the government, and he may not make it out alive, and I don't know if my father's going to get killed or not. So I started coping with shit the best I could. And I think that was actually the first time that I actually tried marijuana and drinking, for the first time in my life. And I was as square as Delaware, good student, athlete, never did anything like that. Next thing I know, Anyway, I did. We came back, and it was a little bumpy, to say the least. And I ended up probably, I would say, in my 20s, so a few years later, I decided on my own, like the moving around. I've moved over 80 times. I counted it up once. It's a lot. I didn't realize that. I didn't realize how stressful that can be. And then I've got 3 brothers, like I said, and all 3 of my brothers happen to be gay men. So there was a whole host of things that would happen. Kids aren't nearly as sweet and innocent as we like to, portray them to be. They certainly can be, but they can get rather nasty. So you can go ahead and fill in the blanks. But I always wanted to know what we were here for. What's the meaning of life? None of this seems to make sense. And so I started to study comparative religions on my own. So I was going to temples, to mosques, to synagogues, to churches, you name it, wherever I could go. And it was during that time that I ended up meeting this guy quite by accident. And he basically was a cult leader. I didn't realize it. I don't think he would have ever described himself like that. And that's usually what it is with cults. But I jokingly say I zigged when I should have zagged. And for whatever reason, that guy's thing, worked for me. Most people saw him and they're like, that guy's out of his mind. See, I'm gone. But for me, I was like, nope, I'm all in. And I didn't realize anything was really untoward at first or fishy or strange. Granted, I was 22 at the time, but within a short amount of time, and I really don't remember off the top of my head, I realized like this is kind of weird, but you keep getting in deeper and deeper and deeper, and the next thing you know, like you're all in, and you're saying stuff that you don't necessarily believe in, but you're afraid not to spout the party line, so to speak, for fear of the retribution that would come back from your fellow members in that group, and then like the leader of the group and all that kind of stuff. So it got a little weird. It was tough. I won't lie. It took up I was with the group physically about 7 years, but the biggest part of being in a cult is kind of the brainwashing or the mind control, and that's the toughest part of it. And so it really took me another 13 years total before it was about 20 years of my life. And working my way back out of that was easily the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. Easily. Not a lot of fun, but the alternative of like the spiral of depression, anger, sadness, confusion, couldn't focus, etc., that was not working for me at all. And I was like, no matter what it takes, I'm going to work through this, by hook or by crook. And so I went out and started I went to an exit counseling kind of place for a couple of weeks. And at the end of that, the only thing I knew was, okay, so there are tools to deal with this, but I'm in no shape to not be like having someone to go see at least once a week and talk to. And so I went to these three different psychologists and psychiatrists who were highly recommended. And I got the same response from all three of them. Great people. I'm sure they're great at their jobs, but they weren't prepared for my story. And as soon as I started telling my story, they just kind of, the jaws hanging on the floor. And that was a lonely moment. That's the moment I realized, oh shit, I'm on my own. Take advice to the best of your ability from those who are, qualified. Like if they have something good to say, I'm going to listen to it. But you've got to make your own way and find your own way. And so that kind of, I don't remember exactly how, but I ran into this company called Centerpoint Research Institute. And the guy that started it, his name was Bill Harris. And very smart guy, very interesting guy, and very learned guy. And he had this product he created. He calls it HoloSync. And he claims that you could meditate more deeply than a Buddhist monk at the touch of a button. And I was like, what? I've tried to meditate before. You close your eyes and you're, everything that's going through your head pops up. It's impossibly difficult, right? So there's the first part of meditation is you just trying to remain calm and just sort your way through these varied thoughts that you have and whatever emotional state you're in. And then there's the part of meditation which is perfecting whatever your form of meditation is. So knowing those two things, this guy saying this, and then reading this sales letter that he'd written, I was like, wow, he's claiming, you can overcome PTSD, traumas, addictions, alcoholism, drugs, abusive relationships, all kinds of things. More focus, more success, more peace, more happiness. I was like, dude, if 10% of what this guy's saying is true, I've got to try it. And so I did, and I started using it, and it has been a huge game changer for me. I really don't know that I would be anywhere near as well adjusted as I am now. And I know how that may sound, but it took a long time to get there, and I'm proud to say it. But I don't know that I would be. I've got a lot of friends who were in that group. Friends, I can't say friends. We went through it together. There's only one guy I can actually talk to who's, succeeding, doing well. He can discuss it. He understands what happens. And he's actually trying to educate people on it. And ironically, this Saturday, he's got a documentary being made about the topic matter, and I'm going to get interviewed for that. And it should probably be, I can't say where it's going to be, I don't know, but it will be a big release and it will be well known. So I'm going to talk about it there. But yeah, the holistic meditating with it, it's just been amazing. And I don't want to get weird about it or evangelical, but I really do. I know this much. If it took me from where I was, being in that kind of bad shape, and I was in a pretty bad way, I was smoking a lot of weed, I would binge drink, but more importantly than that, those were like crutches to kind of help me deal with the stress, was, always feeling angry, confused, depressed, anxious, second guessing myself, not being able to make decisions, not being able to focus, not being able to plan out into the future. It was a lot. And if I came from that to where I am now, where those are momentary things in my life, and I can literally, in that moment, refocus my mind on what I really want to do, and then that's gone. That feeling of whatever, agony, anxiety, whatever, that's no small feat. And so I can't help but think what that could do for whoever's listening to this, for your life. Like, your path will be your path, but I really recommend that you at least give something like that a try. And it doesn't have to be holistic. It can just be you sitting quietly for 5-10 minutes a day, whatever. But if you really want to meditate like a Buddhist monk at the touch of a button, and that takes about 35 years, folks, I don't know anything else that works as well as holistic.
Yes. Well, wow. That is a lot, and that is so interesting, Dar. We have a lot in common in different ways. So I think that's kind of cool. My first language was Spanish, and
right on.
Everybody I knew was from Mexico when I was very little, until about 3 years old, 2.5, 3 years old. I didn't even know a word of English. So,
Viva la raza.
Nobody, quien sabe, but nobody knows, and nobody would ever expect that. It's awesome when people talk about you and they're saying something in Spanish and you're like, I know. And then I'll like respond and they'll be like, oh shoot, she understood.
I know a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it's kind of fun and interesting. And I remember that revolution that you went through because I had neighbors that escaped. And
that's right. You did tell me that. They
left everything they owned, came to this country with practically nothing, and started over. And that actually, their stories, it was like I was living through their stories as this young girl. And then I was in school and we had this, everybody was doing yellow ribbons and there was this whole controversy and hostages and that going on and gas lines. So this is dating us, this is way back there, back in the day. And, what happened for me was I wrote about it in class. And I ended up winning debates about this and getting standing ovations. And I actually presented on the topic for President Carter at the time. And so, and I was like 10. And so that was something that I was really passionate about because I got to hear the stories from these neighbors, and then the other people they were connected to that came to the area also. And so I got to meet all these people with these like, this really just happened. This is happening in our world. And I think today, going to today's time and the gift of what's happening in our world now is that our young people, even at a young age of 10, 11, 12, you're starting to realize how important history is and why it has the meaning it has for us. When you're a kid and you're like, okay, I'm going to read this boring book and I'm not connected and it has nothing to do with the people I love. Yes, all that. But then when you're living it, we're living history right now. And when you're living through it, the children, they're compassionate about it. They start to relate and see why do I need to study this? Why do I care about politics, voting season? Why do I care about any of this? And that really makes a difference for us nowadays. And
I hope you're right. I hope that you're right in the sense that younger people, and I want to say kids, they're adults, but even kids too. And kids, I'll say, and forgive me, brothers and sisters that are in high school, in your teens, and I'm calling you a kid, but you kind of still are. But anyone basically still in high school, I'm just going to say kid. I hope they are responding to it and see how important it is, because I was the same as you said. History was dusty, stale, boring, and that I blame that on the teachers, and I blame that on the system, because they didn't make it engaging. And with today's advent of the cell phone, having a video camera in it, and the internet, and a smartphone, you can't deny it. You can't ignore it. And hopefully those parallels are in there. It seems to be. I have a lot of faith in the youth of this country and the kids in this country. I really have a lot of faith in them. I'm more than a little blown away at the protests, at people actually even knowing how the three branches of government work, or how a bill gets drawn up or passed, or what the Constitution says, or anything. It's a very unusual time to be here. Like your friends that you lived with, your neighbors, we escaped Iran literally with the clothes on our back.
Yes.
Literally. We lost the house, we lost our vehicles, bank accounts were seized, land was seized. And so, when we got here, it's our suitcase and what we had on our back. That's it. And it still took my father another year and a half to get out, And you're right. There was a bad narrative, man. And from that moment on, anytime I say Iran, faces drop instantly. Instantly. I've got to be a terrorist. I've got to be some kind of whack job. You know what I mean? What are you going to do?
And I think it's our experience of getting to know people and cultures. For me, I could see nothing but love from that group of people, because that's all I knew. And I heard their stories and what they went through, and I saw tears, and I felt what was going on. And I was like, wow, how do you not love these people? It didn't make any sense not to. And I think that's the beauty and the gift in our universal pause that this year is that we are getting back to what matters most on this planet, even though
I think you're right. I think you're right.
Down, but we're reorganizing to something hopefully much better than what we've experienced.
Well, yeah, I would agree with you. I was going to get really nerdy and scientific for a second that would prove what you're saying is right. Should I?
Please.
Yeah? Okay. So and this has to do with meditation and the holosync, and why you get the results of meditation 8 times faster. And I don't want to turn this into a pitch, but I'm not talking about holosync here. But what happens with an open system was something that was proven by this scientist named Ilya Prigogine. He won the Nobel Prize for this, and his work on dissipative structures. What's this guy talking about? Bear with me. So an open system would be anything that takes in input or energy from its environment. Human beings would be one of them. Okay? Society clearly is an open system. If you even put a chair out into the outside to deal with the elements, the chair is an open system. So what happens when a system gets overloaded and gets inundated with more input or energy from its environment than it can handle, it goes through a period of chaos. Clearly, our country is in a massive period of chaos right now. If we can all remember and go back to, if you want to be a nerd, go see what Ilya Prigogine's theory is on dissipative structures, which I'm talking about here. Feel free, Google it, it's all there. But in layman's terms, chaos is a good thing. If you stop and remember that chaos precedes reorganization of the system, the human being, the society, the country, the globe, the world, the universe, to organize at a higher level than it previously did, and that the chaos is a good thing,
that's it. That
would be so.
Oh, I've lost your picture there, but I think you'll be right back. That is, there you are. Hi. Okay, so we don't hear you yet. I don't hear you yet. Okay, so this is so true, and I know I've studied spirituality and energetics with another person, Donnie Epstein, who talks about the reorganization and the breaking down with how things are, and how that is the same theory of then we get into a new higher level of being and consciousness. So let's see if we can hear Dar. So we're working on that. Yes, that is so interesting. And okay, maybe your mic is on. Okay, so he's figuring it out. That's okay. That, you know what? Everything happens for a reason and a purpose. And I really, really strongly believe that. So while Dar is fixing his computer, which it happens, and that's the whole example of how chaos brings us to a higher level of peace. And that's pretty interesting. The other thing that Dar and I have a lot in common with is I too started using the meditation, and I actually do use the Holosync meditation on a regular basis. And so that has helped me a great deal. I do 3 different forms of meditation, and I do that, believe it or not. Okay, this is a funny story while we're waiting for Dar to return. I went to India and I studied with the monks in India for a few weeks, and we learned some meditations that I brought back with me. And it was such an incredible experience, and something that I'm so grateful I did now that our travel is kind of restricted. I did that maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe 7 years ago. And I just really had a hard time, 6, 7, all those years ago. I could not sit still during the meditations at all. Like, it was, I was really bad. When I went to India to meditate with the monks, I actually got a special note from my doctor that said I had to get up every hour and walk around. And that was really, honestly, I had been hit by a car. I was rear-ended by a car, but really it was me trying to get out of sitting still for long hours. So I kind of broke the rules. And Dar is back. Let's see if we can hear you now.
Say you can hear me.
I can hear you. Yes. All right.
Thank you. So sorry.
Reorganization happened. Right now we were
yes, it did.
And back to order.
Yeah, I don't know where we left, but this chaos that we're going through.
Yes, we left off with your sharing about this incredible scientist theory of chaos and reorganization to a higher level of bliss.
This is it. Yeah, and that's what happens when you meditate. It happens in any open system. So in our society, people are getting very freaked out about the chaos because it is unsettling. The chaos is. If you can remember that this has been proven by science, that this is just the precursor to our entire culture, our entire people, our entire system, reorganizing at a higher, more effective and elegant level than before, that can handle all this input and stress, I think that would be very helpful to everybody. This is a good thing that's happening. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. And I also firmly believe something that was written in that book, Think and Grow Rich, so many years ago. In that book, Napoleon Hill wrote that within the seed of every bad thing that happens, every adversity, every, anything like that, there's always the seed of a equal or greater benefit. So no matter how bad anything gets, if it's all in how you choose to look at it and that the meanings that you give to it. And through that, you can choose a more resourceful meaning for yourself and for everyone else around you, and gain a greater benefit out of it. Great things can happen out of these seemingly, bad, chaotic, dark times.
Yes. And, for me, I am guilty 100% of catching myself cursing this year. I have, this 2020, what's going to happen next? All this. And I realized, I was reviewing the study of water, Dr. Emoto, and another scientist saying even just putting words and intentions on waters changes the molecular structure of our water. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, every time I want to say those things, I need to change it, switch it, and say, wow, now the gift, like Napoleon Hill said, what is the seed of this? What is the amazing gift? We are going to have such a wonderful, incredible rest of this new decade. This is the beginning of something so good. What is beautiful that's going to show up this year and going into next year? And so switching that, the energy that we're putting into this is going to really shift, I believe. I mean, how can it work on a bottle of water or a glass of water and not on our whole world when we're so much, parts of us are water. 70% of our body is water. The earth is water. I mean, it's just, there's got to be something to that. So if you're listening, tuning in today, then take a listen and think about how can you switch your intention and see if that changes the way you show up for your
Right.
family, if you're a teacher, for your students, for your clients, for your employees. How does that shift just that energy? And hopefully it'll help shift us into that higher level of peace and bliss sooner.
Yeah, 100%. You're speaking the truth right there. I didn't mention, this, but I married the youngest daughter of arguably the mastermind, the strategist of the civil rights movement. My father-in-law was Ralph David Abernathy. My mother-in-law was Juanita Jones Abernathy, and their best friends were the Kings. My father-in-law's best friend was Martin Luther King, and so they started the movement. Really, all four of them started the movement, but the men get most of the, we could go down that conversation, that rabbit hole far and deep.
Right?
The patriarchy, the chauvinism. But I didn't know anything about my father-in-law at all. I knew who Uncle Martin was. I knew a little bit about the civil rights movement, and it was basically some black and white images that I'd seen, some movie clips that I'd seen, some newsreels that I'd seen. And, they really don't discuss it in school. And so when I met my wife, Donzale, she was just writing her book, Partners to History, which may still be, it went out of print probably about a decade ago. But there may be some copies floating around on Amazon. I'm not quite sure. But at any rate, she's writing this book longhand. And I'm seeing that there were probably, I want to say like 500-600 black and white photos, 8x10s. And these were noticeable, Birmingham, the young black guy in his sweater getting bit and his pants were torn by the police dog, the German Shepherd, and people being beaten and all kinds of horrible shit. And I was like, what's going on? And she explained it to me. Oh, that's Daddy, that's Uncle Martin. I'm like, Daddy, Uncle Martin, what? And so finally when she told me everything, I was like, wow, okay. So anyway, we ended up falling in love and getting married, and I got a lesson in my white privilege and my systemic racist ideologies that have been floating around in my head. So that was another thing that I've worked my way through. I'm very proud of that as well. But one of the things that you were just talking about, you want to talk about overcoming adversity, like what black people have been enduring in this country for 400 years, that this country was built on the backs of slaves. The White House was constructed by slaves. That's something most people don't talk about in white America. You say it to black America and they're like, yeah, I know. Give me a cup of coffee, please, right? But most people don't even know about that. And it's always amazing to me, clearly what they did, the four of them, were able to accomplish, changed the course of this country's history and the history of the world, and affected literally billions of people. But they were up against it, they were up against it. To remain positive in the face of literal death threats every day, beatings, attacks, punches thrown, letter open. Uncle Martin got stabbed in the chest by some unstable woman, up in here, and was in the hospital for a few days. My father-in-law got attacked more than once, beaten and left for dead in a ditch. Took a hatchet to between his shoulder blades as he was running away from a group of Klansmen. So most people would be like, okay, I'm cool. I don't need any more of that in my life. I don't need that negativity, right? But they soldiered on. My wife, my mother-in-law was pregnant with my wife. She was 6 months pregnant, and they were living in Birmingham, Alabama. And there used to be we're really dating ourselves, Sheila. There was a show called The Tonight Show. It's still on. Jimmy Fallon hosts it. Well, before Jimmy was a guy named Jay Leno. Before Jay Leno was a guy named Johnny Carson. And before Johnny Carson was a guy named Steve Allen, and before him, the guy who started it all was Jack Parr. And Jack Parr was doing the Tonight Show. My mother-in-law was listening to it. She fell asleep, and she was awakened that she needed to get up out of the front room, turn the TV off, and go into the back bedroom. So she had her toddler, my sister-in-law Wanda, and she was about one and a half, and then she's 6 months pregnant. No sooner does she get back to the back of the house in the bedroom than does the whole house explode. It gets bombed.
Wow.
And she survived it, obviously. My wife's here. My mother-in-law lived a long life. She passed away a year ago. But in the ensuing aftermath, when the police showed up, they were out on the street talking to the cops. And another explosion occurred, I would say, I don't know, 10 blocks away. Let's just say that. And my mother-in-law was shaken. She looked at the cops. She was, oh my God, what was that? And he did this. Oh, he's looking at his wristwatch. He's like, oh, that would be such and such. Wow. It's that deep. So now, why am I talking about that? What's happening today with Black Lives Matter, with the murder of George Floyd, and all these issues being brought up by black people in America who know this history intimately in details that we don't know about.
Right.
And I didn't know about it, and I had to learn, and I have learned. And I was fortunate enough to sit at the feet of my mother-in-law, the great Dr. Juanita Jones Abernathy, the most amazing human being I've ever known in my life. I don't think I'll ever meet anyone as great as that again, ever. If I could be a tenth of how great she was, I would consider myself a total success.
Wow.
And she would tell me these stories, and I was just like, wait a minute, you were pregnant, 6 months pregnant. You had a toddler of about a year and a half, and your house explodes, and this is the middle of the week, and your husband and Martin have gone off on the road again, and you and Coretta and the kids, all the kids, are by yourselves, and you just picked up and continued to fight the good fight. And she's like, yes, without a moment's hesitation, yes, because that's how important freedom is.
Yes.
To everyone, right? And when the bomb goes off outside, the second bomb, she asked the cop, what was that? And nonchalantly, he looks at his wristwatch and he's like, oh, that would be such and such's house or church. I think it was a church. How does the cop know that? Because he's in the Klan.
Wow.
He's a part of it. They all know what's going on. And so at that moment, not only does she knew, and she knew this, by the way, she knew it, but there was irrefutable evidence that the police officer is not only aware of it, but he's part of it. And so the people that are here to protect me aren't here to protect me.
Not at all.
Not at all. So it's profound. I hope that people can stop and appreciate that story. I could tell you literally hundreds more, literally, but I don't want to overtake that and make that. But, that's something that's very important to me, civil rights, human rights, because they are human rights, let's be honest. Yes. And my father-in-law said something that's so fantastic. He said many things, but one of the ones I love the most, he said, we fear one another because we don't know one another. We don't know one another because we won't sit down and break bread. Because if we did that, broke bread, we'd find out we have more commonalities than differences, which is what you did with your neighbor from Iran, who left his entire home, not by his choice. He did make a choice. They made their choice to leave, he and his wife and his kids, but it wasn't their first choice.
Right.
Right? They were forced into it. And as you got to know them, you said, I looked in their eyes, I saw the tears, I heard the cracks in their voices, and I saw the loss and the pain and the confusion, and that these were just, you didn't say this, I'm filling it in, these are people just like me, I can relate. And if you stop and think about this, when you sit down with anyone, think of a work setting. It doesn't have to be your enemy, but let's be honest, most people in their work settings have a lot of political situations they get into, the office politics. And so when you sit down with that person that's your adversary at the workplace and you break bread or you have a drink or whatever it may be, I don't necessarily suggest you drink too much because alcohol is going to turn everything sideways, too much of it. But
Right.
breaking bread and start to get to know that person, you're going to break down those barriers and you're going to find commonalities. And when we have commonalities, we see we're connected. We're not separate from that we're experiencing or the person we're talking to. I am you, Sheila. You
Mhm.
are me. Your life is my life in the
Yes.
grand scheme of things, right? And so when I
Exactly.
come at it from like that, how can I have anything but compassion and empathy and understanding and love for you? And
Yeah,
so,
I think so. I think that's where a lot of people don't have the empathy because they haven't walked in those shoes.
yes,
You say white privilege or what have, because you haven't experienced, it's hard to come from something you don't know and
yes,
you don't see. Now, I was homeless 10 to 13 and a, 10 and a half to 13 and a half, then in foster care, emancipated at 15, ended up adopting 3 children. I have 6 total, and they're all different colors of the rainbow from all different places. So I had to have different conversations, and
mm-hmm.
my son that was of color had a completely different treatment at school and different treatment when he ran into the law with friends. He was the only one that was going to go to juvenile hall when all the kids did something together. And I said, okay, I'm calling my 5 attorneys and we're going on the news about this. And that's the only reason it stopped. But it was very different. And we had to have different conversations. They're like, I don't understand this because I love each of those children. They're my children and I
Right.
love them the same. And I can't even understand why anybody would do that. But it happens every single day, all the time. And seeing my close friends and sisters in the different homes I was in that I grew up with also being treated differently. The police were coming and I was like, oh, that's good. We're going to be safe. Oh, no. And it was a completely different. And I said, oh, wow, you're right. And I would see how different we were treated. And I couldn't even understand why, because I wasn't brought up that way or coming from that space. I came from sitting at the table with everyone. That's what I always
Well,
did.
Sheila, first of all, I think it's great that you talk about this. I really do. Um, People need to hear that. People that look like you and people that look like me need to talk about this. It's critically important. You had a very early, what's not the word? What's a baptism into the ways of the world?
Yes.
And yeah, it's in the reason you don't know about, you can't understand it. It's not that you don't have the facility to understand it or that you didn't have the intelligence to understand it. The reason you don't understand it is because it's not talked about. It's never discussed. It's America's ugly secret that's at the core of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my mother-in-law used to say something. She was so great. I cannot tell you how great Juanita Abernathy was. I cannot. If you want to change a situation, if you want to make a situation better than what it is, then you have to be willing to accept the situation for what it is.
Yes.
And that means you don't make it worse than it is, and you don't candy coat it to make it better than it is, but you accept it for what it is. So talk about this. In this instance, if we can acknowledge that we are a racist nation, and we are, and it gives me no pleasure to say that, none whatsoever, but we are. It's a fact, and you can look at history. You can look at the history. This will upset a lot of people, I'm certain. I don't care. It's far beyond time to talk about this. You will see that these ideologies and these, what you said, my friends of color in the foster home were getting treated differently. Their reaction to the police was night and day,
Exactly.
right? Right. You're like, oh, the cops are here. We're safe. They're like, what are you talking about? And that's just every day for them.
Every day.
Right. And you're just like, what are they talking about? And then the cops get there and you're like, holy. I would agree with you. I think it's a necessary part of the evolutionary process. And once again, the guy won the Nobel Prize for it. So might be worth going and checking it out. And, you know, the more knowledge you have, then the more you have access to being able to apply that knowledge, because knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Your application of that knowledge, your indoctrination of that knowledge, your use of that knowledge, that's power. So the more you know, right?
Yes.
Start reading, start watching, informational documentaries, from a variety of sources. Listen to those people that you don't agree with. My wife goes crazy. I'll turn on Fox News just to hear what's being said. I will read Breitbart. I will read and listen to what Tommy Lauren has to say. She's an abject moron. Breitbart is nothing more than a gaslighting, can I swear on your show? Poop factory.
Yeah, they'll be.
Of course they will. But it's all lies.
Yeah.
Those lies sell. It's the way the brain, we won't go down that path, but our survival mechanism in the brain, which really hasn't evolved too much over the past few million years, that survival mechanism causes us to have tendencies towards being selfish, which isn't the best thing, the most attractive thing. And out of that desire to survive, always scanning for danger, when someone talks about danger or talks about conspiracy theories which lead to anger and confusion, right? That always will sell. And that's what these informational channels, and I use information very loosely, they're propaganda machines. Breitbart, Fox News, the rest of these sites. They're not telling the truth. They're not explaining science. They're not showing facts. But it's important to know these things so that you can make better choices for yourself, and you can navigate those waters more successfully so that we can reorganize and come to an understanding and find where our commonalities are. Really,
Yeah.
like the fear is, it's the cheapest, easiest thing to do is to make someone afraid.
Mm-hmm.
What takes real courage is acknowledging the situation for what it is and then having the guts to move forward to make it better, because you are going to get made fun of, ridiculed, blocked. All kinds of things will happen. It won't be an easy path. But if it's worthwhile and you believe that this is something that will help everyone, then, God bless you. I watched firsthand, I listened firsthand to my in-laws and what they were able to do. And look, no one's bombed my house. No one's thrown a hatchet in my back, right? I don't get discriminated when I walk down the street because I'm white. But let me tell you what, me and my black wife walk down the street and she starts having a different interaction, and I necessarily start having a different interaction just because of what people are saying. It's crazy. But then when we sit down and start to talk to those people, have a conversation, if we're fortunate enough to get a chance to break bread, everything changes instantaneously. So that's my long-winded way of saying I'm always looking for the good in people, but I never stop remembering what's right in front of me and what the situation is. I'm seeing it for what it is, always hoping for the best.
Yes. It's you go into the thing about it's not better than it is. It's not worse than it is. It is what it is.
The thing I would say is it's great to see that you've written a book and you're a woman and you're doing this show and it's getting broadcast. Congratulations to you. We need more women in positions of influence and power. And that goes from the White House all the way down to every institution we have, in every system we have. I think the ship sailed on being political.
I'm trying not to.
No. Listen, man. Listen.
It is.
I understand, when you're speaking to a big audience, and it's the nature of this format, We're not in a studio. We don't have a network telling us what we can and can't say. So naturally, these things are going to come up. Some people are going to get offended. C'est la vie. Get offended. Have at it. Go nuts. I'm offended every single day, at least 24 times, just because of the reactions I get from other people because of my wife. I don't let that ruin my day, but nonetheless. But yeah, it's important, man. Listen, I could hear people talk about abortion if before abortion we started to focus on the elderly, the infirm, the sick, children who are already born, who are starving, who have medical care attention that's not being, they have medical issues that aren't being paid attention to. if we would deal with racism in our country, if we would deal with women being treated as second-class citizens, and let's be honest, they still are. They do not make the same dollar per dollar. A woman is at what, 79 cents per a man's dollar, right?
Wow.
I mean, really? How about we flip that and see how the guys like that equation? Again, let the guys' genitals be regulated and their paycheck be worth less money.
Right.
You're laughing because you know every woman knows. They're like, come on, please.
Yes.
Please.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah, it would be a little bit easier to hear it if we could address those issues. And then if you wanted to talk about abortion, that's still nobody's business but that woman and the man involved in it.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. What a concept, right?
Very personal. So, Dart, we
Yes.
are coming to the end of the hour, believe it or not. And
All right.
so what would you like to share or share for people to connect more with you, or any last words on how to get through this year?
So the easiest way to get a hold of me if you want to contact me is go to my website, dardixon.com. We've got this incredible course that I've put together with the sponsor of my podcast, which is Centerpoint Research Institute. And we put together a course. It's called Pathways to Purpose. I've not seen anything like it out there before. And I'm really proud of it. I'm honored to be working with Centerpoint. We're going to have that available for sale soon. I can share that when that comes. And then just to give everybody a little taste of what I'm talking about, Centerpoint made a little soundtrack, and they call it 15-Minute Rescue and Renew. And it's my gift to you for free. There are no strings attached. I'll send the link to you. You can get it. Literally no strings attached. The next time you have a bad day, something upset you, whatever, go take 15 minutes, sit down, press play, put the earphones in, press play. 15 minutes later, I promise you, you'll be like, what was that guy talking about before? And you want to rewind what we were talking about. It's an amazing tool. And that's just a sliver of what I'm talking about if you use HoloSync.
Beautiful.
But that's it. Yeah.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me, Sheila.
Thank you, Dart. It was a pleasure to have you here. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Likewise.
Tune in next week. All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Tahibo Tea Club's original Pure Pau Arco Super Tea helps build the red corpuscles in the blood, which carry oxygen to our organs and cells. Our organs and cells need oxygen to regenerate themselves. The immune system needs oxygen to develop, and cancer dies in oxygen. So the tea is great for healthy people, and it can truly be miraculous for someone fighting a potentially life-threatening disease due to an infection, diabetes, or cancer. A 1-pound package of tea is $49.95 plus shipping. To order, please visit lovemysupertea.com. That's love, L-O-V-E, my, M-Y, super, SUPERTEA.com. So the complete website is lovemysupertea.com. Or call us at 818-288-4128, Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5 California time. That's lovemysupertea.com at 818-288-4128.
This is Sheila Mack. Thank you again for tuning in, and I have some homework for you. So go and get your copy of the new Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. It is now on Amazon, Audible, Kindle, and all major bookstores. And get ready to tune in daily as I share the Business Leader Reboot. So that is starting a business, side business, or extra income. I don't care if you're starting from zero, rebooting, starting over completely. We are going to go through the steps over this year slowly together to rebuild, reboot, and reinvent your business and personal life, or your career and personal life on your terms. And I will also be sharing about investing in properties and how to get some passive income going this year as well. So stay tuned.
Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with boot straps and bra straps. Get your copy at www.sheilamac.com today.